We are continuing in our study on Christian apologetics. We had an introduction last week explaining what apologetics is, if you did not know. Basically, that is providing a defense for what you believe in. It could also be called Christian evidences, is what we're doing. Christian apologetics, Christian evidences, it's the same thing. And we mentioned this last week. I'm going to start this week with the same thing. We are going to prove the three foundational facts. And these facts are, there is a God, and we can spend the rest of the year, actually the rest of our lives, proving this from one fact after another, after another, after another, that shows the extraordinary creation that only an omniscient, omnipotent God can produce. And very wise, very creative, and proof upon proof upon proof that this could not happen by accident. Matter of fact, it's absurd to even think that. The next one is that the Bible is the Word of God. We're going to look at that, and once again, we could spend the rest of our lives looking at that. But hopefully, this is not going to take us to the end of our lives as far as this class is concerned. The third one is Jesus of Nazareth is the Son of God. That's the third fact that we are going to prove in this class. And there was a point years ago, and every now and then somebody is dumb enough to try to bring it up again, of trying to claim there was no Jesus of Nazareth on the earth, that it's all fiction, that there was no such a person. Well, that keeps getting, that's brought up every now and then, and it's someone who's just trying to be provocative, I think, more than anything else. But it's solidly shot down every single time. Now, I call these the foremost truth. The foremost truth is this. The foremost truth is God exists. That is the foremost truth. And the fact is, God must exist. Every other truth, everything else follows that. That is truth number one. That is the foremost truth. There can't be a you or me without God. There can't be this universe that we see around us without God. There can be nothing without God. And we're going to discuss nothing. And we need to put on our thinking caps to think about nothing. That sounds funny. But we got to talk about nothing. Because our idea of nothing, actually, quite often, we have something, and I'll discuss that is still there. But when we're talking about nothing, we're talking about a place that has never existed. Because there has never existed nothing. Ever. Why? God has always been, from eternity to the past, to eternity to the future. He has always been here. Before there was a here, this earth. He has always been around. Before Genesis 1:1, He was from eternity. Before Genesis 1:1, there was already the knowledge of what was going to occur, all the way to the point of the cross. Not only was mankind going to be created, mankind was going to sin, mankind needed a way out of that, and Christ, the Son of God, was going to save us all. It was going to have to be a Savior for us. All of that was in the mind of the Godhead from eternity. And there's never been nothing. Now, if you can reject that first truth, you can reject all truth. You can do it. If you can reject the first one, and all truth comes down from that one, if you can reject that one, and that is the biggest one, you can reject anything, and you just throw your mind away, is what you're doing. You're just tossing it away. Professing to be wise, they became fools. That's Romans 1:22. They thought themselves wise. They thought themselves incredibly intelligent, incredibly educated. We can figure all these things out, but they suppressed that truth, the greatest truth, and they became fools in the process. That's what happens, because you cannot explain your own existence outside of God. That's an impossibility. Romans 1:28, God gave them over to a debased mind. He didn't make them have a debased mind. That's where they headed. They became fools. Their foolish hearts were darkened. They went and they became the worst sort of having this debased mind, which is willing to toss out anything that would point to God. Anything at all. Now, we're going to begin this way. We're going to start with Newton's third law. Newton's third law is for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, which means for anything to exist, it must have a cause. It has to. It has to have a cause. And this is Newton, and of course we would think, well, that's kind of obvious. Well, it is. And we know it even before Newton, this was known. Newton just puts it down in words. Or others probably put it down in words too. But this is Newton's third law, and we're just going to look at some things. First off, for those who want to say, okay, since everything has a cause, what is God's cause? God has to have a cause. Well, this is answered pretty quick in Genesis and also in Exodus. We're going to cover Exodus first. This is already answered centuries ago. And that kind of sounds like some forethought to me and some foresight to me. But then Moses said to God, this is Exodus 3, beginning in verse 13, "Indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?" And God said to Moses, "I am who I am." And he said, "Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you." That's what you tell them. All right, now this seems confusing, especially in English. But this would not have been confusing to the Hebrews should they have asked Moses, "Who sent you?" And he says that. Now, when they ask Jesus, well, they're arguing with Jesus, "You're not yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham?" And he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." And they knew what he meant. It's going back to this and further scripture beyond this. I am who I am, or I am. This is, in fact, he is saying, the self-existent one. That is what he's saying. I am is I have always existed. I have no cause. I have no beginning. I have always been, which is, we can understand those words, but in thinking about it, it's massive. It is like what David said, "It is too wonderful for me. I cannot attain it." You can understand the words, you can understand what it must mean, but then trying to imagine it and working your way through it, you get into something extraordinary. Now we go to Genesis 2 and verse 4, where we have the introduction of this. This is, in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It's not Yahweh. This is Yahweh, or how in English we say Jehovah. God has more than one name used through the Bible. God has more than one name. And that this is first brought in Genesis 2 and verse 4. And this too is the self-existent one. He has always been. And just in having that name is showing in anyone who says, well, what's the cause of God? He's already answered that. He has no cause. If you think that somehow you can outsmart the Bible, you need to rethink that. Because the Bible is not from men. You can outsmart men. All right, you can do that, but you cannot outsmart God. That is an impossibility. Now, everything in this material realm, and I want to emphasize this, everything in this material realm can be explained by a cause, even if we don't know what the cause was. Okay? Even if we don't know what that cause is. Such as, a few months ago, we went to a particular store, and there was a window of the store. Of course, they have these huge window of the store where there was now plywood there. It used to be glass. Now there's plywood. Well, I didn't ask what the cause was. I didn't want them to have to explain, what exactly happened. But you knew something happened. You knew there was a cause, even when you don't know what the cause is. And they may not have known what the cause was. If they had something recorded, some kind of camera, they would have caught it. But who knows? Well, I don't know. But what I'm getting at is, even when we don't know what the cause is, we know that something caused this, something made this, something caused this to happen. And now we're just going to look at a few things of where we know this could not have been done by accident. It's impossible. And everyone would know it's impossible. Here is number one. Tell me how that happens by accident. Well, it doesn't. That doesn't happen by accident at all. This, we call these were made by a people we call the Toltec. Okay, the Toltec did not call themselves the Toltec, and we know that because we don't know who they were. We just know what they made, and we have given them that name. All right? And we know this didn't just happen by accident. This is not a natural rock formation. It'd be kind of absurd to say that it is. But we know there is a cause for this. Even if, did any of us ever see this being done? No, there's nobody alive that saw this being done. This was when the Aztecs came around. This isn't theirs. It's somebody else's. And I don't know what they may have called them, but this is, they knew somebody else did this, and they knew humans did it. Because you know that something like that has to have a maker. Something like that absolutely has to. Here is something, this is from Turkey. I don't know if you've heard of Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is a mystery. And there are those that don't really like talking about it, because you'll notice the sculptures on this. I don't exactly know what that is. Honestly, I don't. It's got a tail and it's got teeth, and I guess it has claws. This looks like a boar. That looks like a pig to me. That does not. But we know that's not a natural rock formation once again. Yes, ma'am.
Is this these monuments
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right. This is like Stonehenge, of where somebody in the ancient past did this. This is more skillful than Stonehenge. Yeah, Stonehenge, there's no carving done there. This is more skillful, and this is, Göbekli Tepe is considerably larger than Stonehenge. It's huge. They know it is by the ground penetrating radar, but they've never really dug a whole lot of it yet. And this is surprising because this, going from the atheistic mindset and the mindset of your basic evolutionists, when this was done, and obviously it was done by men, when this was done, they say we should basically be like just hunters, gatherers. We're nomadic and would not be doing anything like this. Well, here it is. Rewrite your theories. Rethink your life even, because this is considerably older than anything else that they have found concerning civilization. This is considerably older. And I'll just tell you what I think. I don't know if this is pre-flood or post-flood. I am of the opinion that things that were built before the flood, if you made them out of stone, they could probably survive, or much of it could survive, a flood. They get buried, perhaps, or not. But was this before or after? I don't know. I have no idea. It's possible that it was before, but I don't know. But nobody knows who these people were. We don't even they haven't even made up a name for them yet, I don't guess. But here's another thing. And I don't know if you can make all this out, but this is not concrete. This is a massive stone. That this is old. All right, here's an older photograph of the same stone. Older photograph from, it was being taken out of the quarry is where it was, and it was headed to a place like this. If you can, that's a man down there. And you can see the size of these stones. These stones are massive, much bigger than Stonehenge as far as size of stones. Much, much bigger. Much bigger than the stones that were put into the pyramids. While the pyramids are astonishing, they weren't taking stones like this. Okay? But we know where it was quarried from. We know men had to have done it, and we know that they stopped. This was going somewhere, but they stopped. You want to know why they stopped? Think about it. What's that?
It's in a form of a foundation.
Yes, it is, and they were using it as a foundation. Matter of fact, the Romans, I don't have a photo of it, but the Romans, when the Romans came around, a long time afterwards, they see things like this, and they couldn't do it on this one. They see things like this, and they think, hey, we'll put a temple on top of that thing. And you can tell the difference between whoever did this and what the Romans did on top of it. Okay? Now, anybody want to venture a guess, or at least why I think they stopped? The flood. That was it. There is no getting that out anymore. There isn't completing this little project anymore. It's the flood. The flood stopped it. That's my opinion. But wouldn't we expect things like this? That we would possibly see projects that didn't get finished? Things, because as described from Scripture, that when the flood came, They were marrying and giving into marriage. It was a normal day. They're doing what they have been doing. It's just another day on the earth, and okay, now it's over. All right. And everything concerning that, this civilization is done. And there's only 8 people that survive that. And a new world begins after that. It's the same old world, but all that civilization is gone. Now, we come to this one. And this is just showing what we would see as, what's special about this? Okay, these guys, if we could see their expression, they are extremely unhappy at this point. All right, this is Scott's expedition to the South Pole. He is racing Amundsen to get there. Now, Scott is British. He's English. And it is the English who have their expedition. Amundsen is from Norway. And you'll notice, well, this is the photo from the South Pole. And Amundsen left this here. It has the Norwegian flag, or the Norway flag. There's a tent there. Some other things may have been left behind. And when Scott's team saw this at a distance, they knew they weren't the first ones there. They had been beaten there. And the tragic thing is, the men you see in this photo, none of them survive. All right, they find them, and they find the camera and other things so that we have these photos. But yeah, these men do not survive this expedition. They're going to die on the way back. But this would have been obvious that somehow among all this snow and ice, all this created itself? No, it didn't. You would know another human being has been here and they left these things behind, actually to let you know they've already been there. All right, that's why Amundsen did it. And you know they're going to leave a flag, but yeah, and here's a tent you can use while you're here. And but Amundsen, he and his expedition, they make it out no problem at all. But my point is, in every single one of these, there is a cause, and it's obvious. It's obvious. Now, atheists must explain everything from nothing. From void to a functioning universe to life on earth. They have to explain every bit of this. And they really haven't done it. They make up stories. And the stories break the laws of physics and the laws of nature all the way through. You cannot have life from non-life. All right, that's the law of biogenesis. You cannot have something from nothing. There are laws stating, and I think we mentioned it last week, that maybe we didn't, but neither matter nor energy are created nor destroyed. You can't create matter. You and I can't. Anything in this material realm, and that's what I want to emphasize, anything in this material realm has cause and effect. Everything in this material realm has to be explained by something that governed under the laws of physics and under the laws of this realm. Something outside of that realm, outside of this realm, well, that's different. You know, I can't explain everything out beyond this created realm. That's where God's throne is. You'll find it somewhere beyond this. That's where you'll find angelic beings. And yes, I also believe angelic beings can be on this earth as well. Can you see them? No. No. but I have too many examples of where we see or too many things being spoken of to think that angels are never concerned with what's going on this earth or sent to do some kind of thing. That's not saying miracles, because it's not confirming a message. But but as watchers, yes, things like that. Now, coming back to this, atheists have to explain everything from nothing, and I need you to put your thinking caps on in this one. They start with the question. This is their starting point. How does everything exist? How does everything exist since there is no God? That's their starting point. Now, that's not real scientific inquiry, because it negates this, that it's impossible. Since it's impossible for there to be a God, we've got to explain how we got here. And really, it doesn't matter how we explain it as long as we keep this out. That's the truth. That's the truth. We can never admit there is a God. We can never admit we can't explain this without a creator. All right? There is nothing, their thinking is there's nothing above nature, so nature is all you have to explain nature. And nature is all you need to explain nature. But as we're going to see, that is circular reasoning completely. All right? We go from this, that's nothing. And there, we go from this to everything. And how is that done without a creator? How is it done? And that is quite a task, because you have the laws of physics and you have matter. Laws of physics govern matter. Okay? Matter can't create itself. Laws of physics say matter cannot create itself. And matter is not eternal either. Matter hasn't been around. But here you have this perfect matchup, somehow, this perfect matchup between an object and the laws that govern that object, and all of it comes around accidentally. That's impossible. And the very laws will tell you it's impossible. Did matter appear and bring with it the laws that govern it? Or were the laws of physics waiting from eternity for matter to appear? Because they match perfectly together. How does that even happen? How does that happen? That would be like, let's say, the radiator of your car existing from eternity, waiting for your car to arrive. And it perfectly fits, boom, right into your car. Waiting for your car. It's the same thing. It is an absurdist idea. And you cannot ignore these things. Now, atheists explain nature by nature. Nature is caused by natural causes. Nature is the initial cause of nature. All right, nature can't create itself. And what you're into here is actually circular reasoning. And this is a loop. Nature is both cause and effect. How does that happen? How does that happen? Well, how does the natural world exist? By the natural world. That's how it exists. Question answered. What's next? All right, nature creates itself and is the cause for its own existence. That's what they're trying to prove. And that's as far as they go. And they're not willing to go beyond that to point to God, the God of the Bible, as the creator. They're not willing to do it. They'll do all kinds of things, all kinds of nonsensical things that have come around. Of a life came from another planet, and that's how life got here. Well, then you have to explain where the life on that other planet come from. Somehow that doesn't matter. Somehow, that's an alien thing. It's a monster thing. It just does. Just run with it. But here is that you have this circle inside this boundary, and the boundary says we cannot look outside of nature. This boundary says we cannot look at the supernatural. We have to look at the natural only. What if it demands that it could not be created on its own? It can't just spring from nothing. Now, we have this. This is from Antoine Lavoisier. I may be mispronouncing his name. It's a law of conservation of mass. Mass can neither be created nor destroyed. Later refined, neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed. All right, to say that matter can come from nothing, naturally come from nothing, takes us back scientifically before 1789. All right, and it is the atheists that always want to say, that the creationists are taking us back like before Louis Pasteur, taking us back hundreds of years in science. No, not in the least. It's the atheists, it's the evolutionists. They are taking us back to where, even before Louis Pasteur, to say that life can appear from non-life. Well, Louis Pasteur is showing that it can't. And, by the way, might I add, Louis Pasteur wasn't exactly an atheist. And neither was Newton and these others. All right? And you have this arrogant mindset, a debased mind that thinks, I know better than them. You probably don't. You probably are creating things from your hatred of God and that truth. Nature is incapable of explaining itself by itself. Nature cannot cause its own existence. The material realm cannot self-exist. It cannot do it. Now, we're going to play a game, and we're going to have to think in this game. We're going to have to do it. All right? Fact. Here's a fact. We've already mentioned this. There's never been a time when nothing existed. Never. There's been a time when the earth and the stars did not exist. You could, if you could go back in time and go to day 3 on this earth, the third day of creation, you would see plants, but guess what you would not see in the sky? You wouldn't see stars, you wouldn't see the sun, you wouldn't see the moon. I don't know what you would have seen. Maybe it was, I don't know that it was total darkness. I really don't know. I wasn't there, and it's not described. But there was no sun, moon, stars there. So plants are older than the stars. And that brings me to a point, we'll talk about this later, is never think that you can compromise, somehow you can have this happy compromise between Genesis and evolution. There is no happy compromise. They are completely at odds with each other in many, many ways. And yep, there are Christians who have done it. They think that, I can believe God in Genesis on this hand, and I can believe evolution on this hand, and everything works perfectly well together. It does not. Not in the least. One is, like we already said, the whole motivation for evolution is to explain how we got here since there is no God. That's the entire motivation. Now, is that the motivation? How do you merge that with Genesis chapter 1? Well, you can't. The evolutionists will tell you you can't do that, and God would tell you you can't do that. You can't do it at all. Now, Micah 5 and verse 2, whose goings forth are from old, from everlasting. All right, this actually is a description of Christ. That's a prophecy concerning Christ. We have Psalm 90 and verse 2. Before the mountains were brought forth, or even you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Before there was a single human being to acknowledge Him, to worship Him, He has been around. From everlasting, that's in the past, to everlasting, that is in the future. Now, if there was a time of nothingness, what would it look like? Okay, so we come to this book. This is an atheist. His name is Lawrence M. Krauss. We're going to have just a couple of quotes from him. This is from his book, A Universe from Nothing, because he believes you can have universes from nothing happening all the time, literally all the time. Like 400 appeared today. Well, where are they, Lawrence? Where are they? You haven't seen the first one. But he would claim that no, you can't see them, but they're happening. Surely they must be happening. Well, here's a quote. All right, for I have learned that when discussing this question, it's the question of nothing. Because it's a universe from nothing. The universe has to come from somewhere, and without the universe, there's nothing. According to him, there's nothing. All right, for I have learned that when discussing this question in public forums, nothing upsets the philosophers and theologians who disagree with me more than the notion that I, as a scientist, do not truly understand nothing. Well, I don't care what you call yourself. If you think nothing can be something, you've thrown your mind away. That's all there is to it. I don't care if you think you're a scientist or everybody agrees that you're a scientist. If you're doing something as dumb as this, all right, Lawrence, you need to be doing something else. Maybe come to some common sense in all this. But he says, for surely nothing is every bit as physical as something. Okay? Have you ever gone to the grocery store and bought a 5-pound bag of apples? Well, okay. Make it whatever you want. And you check the price. Have you ever seen the price of no apples, no pound of apples, the apples don't exist, as being the same price? Because that's what he's saying. Ever as physical. That is, an apple is physical and no apple is physical too. That's what he's saying. And he doesn't perhaps he does. I don't know what he's thinking. Okay? It's the same as, for surely 0 is every bit as physical as 1. It's not. And he would know that. When did nothingness have physical properties? What's the physical property of nothingness? Nothing. It doesn't even exist in time. Nothing has no physical properties at all. When did nothing have being? It doesn't. Nothing. It can have no being. And this is his little box of nothingness. He wants to say that if we were to have a box or a cube, really it needs to be a cube in between the stars, or even a cube in between, this would be a tiny one, a cube in between protons of an atom. If we looked inside that cube, because he would have to say that this cube out in space between the stars is nothing. There's nothing in that cube. There can't be anything in that cube. If we go in between protons, there can't be anything in that cube. That would be nothing. But he's entirely wrong. This cube out in space, do you know what would be in that cube? First would be radioactivity. Second would be photons pouring through that thing. Could you see the stars through that cube? If you were standing in the cube, could you see the stars? Yeah, you could. You have photons pouring through there. No telling what else you have coming that's traveling through space through there. There are things in that cube. It's not nothing. It's not nothing at all. Aside from the fact that you have space, all right, space is to be considered in all this. And I don't mean outer space, I mean space in general. Space in general. Because we can take that for granted that when, should there be absolutely nothing, that space would be the only thing that remains. And actually it's not. It wouldn't be remaining there at all. All right, yes?
Isn't the cube something and not nothing?
Well, yes, but it would be his hypothetical cube. Would the cube be something? Yeah, it would be. And and the measurements of that cube would be something. Yeah, it would be. And it's all nonsensical. Every bit of it is just nonsensical. It's a tradition of nonsensical things. And yes, there is a digression that does occur. It has been occurring for years among your atheists. That just going back to here, there are atheists of decades ago, and not that many decades ago, that would have said this is absolutely absurd. And when he's talking about philosophers, it would be those like Antony Flew who would completely disagree with if he had met Antony Flew going back to the 60s, 1960s. Antony Flew would have told him, "You're wrong. That's just complete stupidity." And why you should even think that. All right, we're going to go through this as quickly as we can. If there ever was absolutely nothing, then that would be a true void. What would a true void look like? All right, it's kind of dull, but here is a true void is zero. It is nothing. All right, and it's astonishing as well. A true void has nothing. Nothing exists. Period. Nothing exists. And I didn't say exists in it because a void can't have an in it. A true void cannot have an in it. An abyss can have an in it. You can be in an abyss, but you can't be in a true void. I'm going to show why that is. A true void has no energy. A true void has no matter. A true void has no three-dimensional space. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. All right, God is the cause. He created. That is how it was done. That is the power behind it. Created the heavens. That would be three-dimensional space here. And the earth. That's matter. All right, three-dimensional space inside this material realm. He created that. That's not to say space did not exist or three-dimensional space did not exist prior to this. I don't know what we got on the other side. I have no idea what it is outside this material realm. But if there is nothing, then even space is nothing. There can be no three-dimensional space whatsoever. A true void has no law controlling over it, nor laws waiting around for something to govern. They don't exist. A true void has no scale because it's nothing. All right, does zero have a scale? No, zero has no scale whatsoever. Can you measure the weight of an apple that doesn't exist? No. Or a unicorn that doesn't exist? No. You can't. A true void also is without time. Time is a principle of existence. A void doesn't exist. There is no time in a void. Math cannot exist in nothing. It requires more than zero. It requires a mind to perceive it and utilize it. There's nothing to measure. There is no weight, no mass, no matter, no energy, no space, no velocity, no direction, no chance. A true void is dead zero. There is no mathematics in dead zero. There's nothing there. A true void cannot exist here. Time measures existence. It cannot measure nothing. Time does not exist time can't exist here. Time does not exist for itself. It is a measurement of existence, is what it is. A true void has no law of chance or odds. Zero remains zero and cannot become nothing. A true void produces nothing. Now, I just want to do this and we'll close out for today. All right, maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. I remember as a teenager hearing this for the first time. Okay, the monkey and the typewriter theory. Here's the monkey and the typewriter theory. Okay, if 1,000,000 monkeys each had a typewriter to bang on, given enough time, they would type out the entire works of Shakespeare. Whammo bammo. Every play, every line of the play, every sonnet, every word spelled perfectly, exactly as Shakespeare would have done. That you have 1,000,000 of these, with 1,000,000 of these, with infinite of that, and you eventually come out with Shakespeare. Okay? One, this is seriously flawed. Okay, because you have to answer the question, who supplied the monkeys? Where'd that come from? Okay? Who supplied the monkeys? Who supplied the typewriter? Who taught them that this is what they're supposed to be doing with the typewriter? Who taught them how to change out the paper? You've got a lot of things you've got to answer in all of this. You've got, and then you have this infinite time, and then eventually you get to the works of William Shakespeare. I will say that with millions of monkeys banging on typewriters, someone might accidentally type out the word Juliet. That's a possibility. But it doesn't get any better than that. It can't. This is just preposterous. And that this is a debased mind trying to look for something. And quite often, I think it is convincing themselves there can't be a God. Okay, so we will... Oh, yeah, okay. I put this next. And this is, if you remember the mega noita, it means this idea is impossible. It will never happen. In reality or potentiality, none of this can happen. And we're using these two words from the Greek New Testament. That, it's not going to happen. Okay. It could never potentially happen. All right, I want to thank everybody for being with us, and we will continue next week, hopefully. Thank you very much.